The assassination of John F. Kennedy, President of the United States of America. The truth behind the John Kennedy mystery. Doubt over the Kennedy assassination in Dallas. I remember when I was growing up, my mother had a picture of the late President of the United States, John Kennedy, and his wife hanging in a prominent place in the living room. Later on, when stories of his womanizing started to emerge, and when his wife married Aristotle Onassis, the picture was taken down. Such was the feeling of sadness that was exhibited in the Ireland of the late 1960s, when people started to realise that their idols had feet of clay. Few politicians in history have exerted the fascination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. The Boston senator who became president was renowned for his charm and his great facility for connecting with the people. The world marvelled at how he stood up to Nikita Khrushchev in 1962 and brought the world back from the brink of nuclear destruction. When he made his historic tour of Europe in 1963, the world almost prostrated itself at his feet. The shock was all the greater then when the news reverberated around the globe in November of the same year that he had been most foully murdered in Dallas, Texas. Even now, most people who were alive at the time, including me, can remember exactly where they were when they heard that sad news. A suspect was almost immediately arrested and almost immediately murdered himself. From that moment, the rumours started to circulate that the assassination of President Kennedy was not a straightforward affair. Although the Warren Commission that investigated the killing concluded that it was the work of a lone assassin, many since have continued to question its findings. Part of the truth of the President Kennedy mystery revealed. I have to tell you now that both versions are incorrect. The Commission is right in that there was only one assassin. He was not, however, Lee Harvey Oswald. But all parties are wrong in one very important particular. John Kennedy was not gunned down in Dallas, Texas, or any other place. While the doctors were trying frantically to resuscitate a presidential lookalike, the real John Kennedy was on a plane flying to South America, and he was accompanied by the very much alive and frisky Marilyn Monroe. The circumstances that led to this extraordinary episode are only being revealed to the world for the first time today. Outside of a very limited amount of people, I am the only one to know this. The ancient society of secret historians, of which I am current president, have always maintained agents operating at the highest levels of government. Sometimes they are the heads of state themselves, but they are always in a position to have access to even the most secretive information. In 1962, 3 of our agents were operating within the presidential residence in Washington, D.C. One was very high in the government. One was a member of the domestic staff. The final agent was a highly placed member of the President's security detail. It had been an open secret in Washington in President Kennedy's first years in office that he had been conducting a clandestine relationship with the famous actress Marilyn Monroe. Her appearance at his birthday party in 1962 provided visible evidence that something was going on. Later in that year, the moving-going public were plunged into grief when it was announced that she had been found dead. Her funeral took place at the Westwood Memorial Park, but there was a waxwork effigy that occupied the casket on that sad day. Marilyn had taken a lot of tablets, but the amount was designed only to leave her unconscious, not to kill. She was revived in hospital. The story that she had been found dead was not true. After revival, she was whisked off to Washington and put up, in disguise, as an elderly Saudi Arabian widow, in a hotel to await further developments in the plan which she had been hatching with her famous lover. She posed as a Saudi because it was felt that full Arab dress, complete with face veil, would render her disguise impenetrable. I will have to go back a little bit in my narrative to explain how this set of circumstances arose. President Kennedy had been given a present of a biography of Tsar Alexander I of Russia by the Soviet ambassador. I cannot recall his name, but it's not pertinent to this story. Alexander I was Tsar of Russia in the early years of the 19th century. He may have died in the Crimea in 1825. A mystery has always surrounded his demise. It is strongly believed that he may have faked his own death. There are creditable accounts that he may have lived on for many years as a hermit in Siberia. When the president read the biography of the Russian monarch, it gave him the germ of an idea. If Alexander could do it, why not John? There were some signs that he might lose the forthcoming election and be only a one-term president. This he did not look forward to. Also, he had found the real love of his life in Marilyn. His marriage, after many infidelities, was really only an alliance of convenience. He still was on good terms with his wife as a friend, but she would be easily squared. So long as the rights of children would be taken care of, she was happy for her husband to do a disappearing act. All that remained now was to organise how it could be arranged. There is a long history of political leaders using lookalikes. Often when a famous politician wanted to do one thing, and duty dictated that she needed to be somewhere else, the lookalike would be dispatched to perform public duty. Saddam Hussein famously had several. Hitler had at least one. I once met a very drunk lady on the London Underground who bore a remarkable resemblance to Queen Elizabeth II. I helped her off the train, and over a cup of coffee she told me that she was the Queen's official double. She had been retained to fill in for Her Majesty during the state visit of President Ceausescu of Romania. Some people the Queen felt it would be inappropriate to really meet. Anyway, this lady had been so disgusted by the odour of rotting flesh that seemed to follow the Romanian tyrant wherever he went, that she had to get blind drunk in order to shut out the memory. The final piece of the President Kennedy mystery jigsaw is put together. Anyway, to get back to our story, in America, the President can have access to all the country's records, including that of every prisoner in the country's jails. John Kennedy made use of this authority to recruit two men who were awaiting execution for murder. The first was trained up to be a presidential double. The second was given the identity papers of Lee Harvey Oswald, who had died during his sojourn in Russia. One was to play the president, the other was to play his assassin. They were destined to die anyway, but they were both family men, and the promise that the families would be looked after was sufficient to secure their cooperation. In accordance with the plan, on November 22nd in Dallas, Texas, the fake assassin shot the fake president. Mrs. Kennedy, who knew what was to happen, played her part well. It was announced to the world that John Kennedy had been murdered and Lyndon Johnson was sworn in as his successor. The man who was posing as Lee Harvey Oswald was shot dead a couple of days later by Jack Ruby, who was an undercover agent. The shooting was prearranged and both parties knew it was going to happen. Meanwhile, two people, both heavily disguised as Saudi Arabian widows, were boarding an airplane at Washington International Airport en route to Brazil. That was the last time that either John Kennedy or Marilyn Monroe would set foot in the United States. They are still alive. They live in an estate carved out of a remote area of the Brazilian rainforest. They are very elderly now, but still very much in love. When I last saw President Kennedy in 2005, I asked him if he still followed affairs in his home country. He said he did. I then asked him what he thought of his successors. The bellow of derision with which he answered that question still retained that unmistakable Boston nasal twang.